Morning, everybody. This is Scott from OFCY. I'm the program analyst. And presenting today will be Haley Cole, our Cityspan contact. So we'll have a good expert view of the entire system, both contract and service management. But I just wanted to start off by giving an overview of OFCY. The Oakland Fund for Children and Youth was established in 1996. It's a voter-passed initiative, and currently it earmarks 3% of general purpose funds for children and youth services in Oakland, serving kids from ages 0 to 20. So part of why we do all this data tracking in Cityspan is so that we could report back to the public as well as City Council on how public funds are being spent. So your detail to entering correct and accurate data is very important because it helps us paint a more accurate picture to City Council. And they actually do have to approve our evaluations every year, as well as our grant renewals every year, which fund your programs. So thank you for that. Feel free to chime in with questions. Haley will go over sort of the admin functions of this webinar system on how to ask questions as questions arise, and we'll do our best to answer them as they come. And I'll also chime in from time to time. So without further ado, here's Haley.
Thanks, Scott. And thank you, everybody, for calling in this morning. As Scott said, my name is Haley Cole, and I work for Cityspan. Been working with OFCY and a couple of the other City of Oakland initiatives for the past couple of years. So I'm going to give you an overview from the technical standpoint, and Scott's obviously on the line to help talk more about grantee-specific questions and processes as they come up. So with the webinar, we do have everybody on mute. That just helps us keep the webinar going more smoothly. So you'll see that you have a questions box that you can type your questions into as they come up. Scott and I are both monitoring them. So in some cases, he might just type out a response to you if that works. Otherwise, I'll stop periodically to make sure we're actually addressing all the questions that come in. So we do see them. Please type them as they come up, and we will be sure to answer them throughout the webinar. So to get started, I wanted to show you OFCY.org. It's a great resource for grantees, and I've come to the Grantee Corner Cityspan page of the site. And on here, you'll see we have a webinar that we did last year around the same time. So after today's webinar, I'll be posting the recording that we're doing right now. So you'll have an updated version posted here that you can view at any time or share with any staff who maybe couldn't attend today. There's also just other information on the website that gets updated periodically. So it's always a good resource if you have questions just in general about who to contact for assistance. There's more information down here, which I'll point out during the webinar. This is specific to going through the modification process if you ever need to. And there's also a general Cityspan user guide for OFCY. So if questions pop up and you're just wondering how to do something in Cityspan, this is one resource you can use to try to figure out navigating the system. So this is always available to you. I'm going to log in. So this is your login page to Cityspan. Your URL is ofcy.cityspan.com. We're a web-hosted system, so that means you can access Cityspan from any device that you have internet access on. So that could be your work computer, your home laptop, your mobile device. As long as you have a browser internet access and you come to this login page, you will view your login and you can enter your username and password to get into your specific OFCY site. This also gets updated with important due dates throughout the year, so it's great to check in. Be sure to read these. Scott does post updates regularly. Other useful information on this page is how to contact us for technical support. So Cityspan staffs its own help desk and office, and we're located in Berkeley, so we're in the East Bay too. So you can call us anytime for technical questions. Anytime during normal office hours. We're open from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. We have a toll-free number here. You can also email us if it's easier for you to send an email rather than calling. our email address is just support, SUPPORT, @cityspan.com. And there's also ways you can post messages in Cityspan, which I'll show you in a minute. There's also a forgot password link here. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Oh, just as a framing point, so you see the first announcement on the right-hand side. It's the 1819 quarterly progress reports due dates. And the City of Oakland runs on a fiscal year of July 1 to June 30th. So for the City of Oakland, for OFCY, quarter one is July, August, September. The only strategy that's a little different is the summer, because the summer programs start working in June normally. So for the summer strategy, it's actually June, July, August. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so just one more thing on here is the forgot password link. Anytime if you're having trouble logging in, you'll get a message that says invalid username or password. So at that point, you can click the forgot password link, enter the email address that we have associated with your account, and then you'll be sent an automated email with a temporary password that you can log in with. And after you log in with that, you can reset it. Okay, so I am training in a training site today. It is set up exactly like all of your actual grantee sites, but just the data in here is fake. We don't want to save that. Okay. So most of this information, everything on the home page is pulled from the scope of work. So this, because all of the grantees are returning this year, a lot of the data in your system is already populated from last year. Cityspan copies your scope of work from the previous year. We keep the form submitted. Part of that process is also creating new versions of your activities for you for the 18-19 year. So depending on your strategy, you may track group or individual activities. There's also early child care and internships for those different strategies. So anything you had in 17-18, we've created 18-19 versions for you. And there's some data entry you have to do in those, which I'll go over today. But you'll see that there's a lot of things already populated in your site for you. So starting with the scope of work. So this is your contract with OFCY. So all of these forms, again, they're submitted because when you completed your RFP back in 2016, that determined your programming for the next 3 years. And so the City of Oakland doesn't want that to change, or if it does change, you have to go through a formal process with your grant manager called a modification. And so that's why you'll see at this point when you log in, you can't make any changes. So you can open each one and review them, and if you realize anything has changed, then you should contact your grant manager. I'll just show you here, just if you want to scroll through and check out the contact information. Your strategy is selected at the top. And so the strategy drives some of the programming in your site. There are slight variations from strategy to strategy. One being that with childcare, you make activity projections for adults and youth. Other strategies, there are no adult projections. And so since this is a testing site, it kind of tries to capture every possibility in Cityspan. So not all of you will see everything that I'm showing today. Like a lot of you will have these 2 tabs hidden, and actually these 3. So just keep that in mind. Your left menu and some of your pages will look slightly different when you log in, depending on your strategy.
One thing to add for the cover page is grantees actually get to unlock the cover page themselves to update contact information. So everything from executive director on down. I can't remember if it's just power users, but they have the ability to unlock this page and update the contact information. And please keep this information current because especially for the contract representative and program rep, those 2 people are the main people that we email for general OFCY announcements. So I know we get a lot of bounce back emails because there's staff turnover and this page isn't updated. So to stay attuned to all current OFCY information and announcements, please keep that updated.
Okay, great. And you're right, Scott. I am logged in as a power user. So so power users do have certain like admin privileges that regular users don't. So you can unlock this page and you'll see that these sections become editable. And then when you're done, you'll just need to submit and it will lock it down again. Okay. So again, with demographics and your budget, just review them. If anything has changed, you'll need to go through a modification, but take a look and make sure everything is up to date. Okay, just scroll through. Okay, and so the scope of work activities page it will never actually be editable. It's a reflection of the activities that have been created, either under group, individual, ECMHC, or internships, depending on your strategy. And so if you're looking at this page and you're saying, and you think, okay, I need to change something, this has to be, so this, again, it all pulls from these 4 tabs over here. You can't make any changes directly on here, but at that point you would contact your grant manager. They have the ability to unlock this, and what that does is it makes your activity environment editable. So looking at this, again, these are just this convention with the year behind it is how Cityspan creates your activities. And so whichever activities you had last year have been given an 1819 and a new version. And so if your scope of work is unlocked, you're able to actually go into your activities and you can edit your projections. Right now you see these are locked down, so you can't change them. And if also you can change the location, you can change the activity category, all these things that you can't click on right now will become editable if the scope of, or if your activities form and the scope of work is unlocked. You'll also be able to add new activities once the scope is unlocked. So that is just something you'll have to check out all of your activities. If any are missing, if you have anything new this year, contact your grant manager so you can add those. Okay, so actually let's look at the modifications tab. So we have documentation here that also helps you with all the steps that you need to do in a modification. We have a link to OFCY.org, which is what I showed you originally. So there's a lot of documentation on this process. And this is the form you'll actually have to submit during a modification. Scott, is there any more information you want to talk about?
Sure. So for the modification type, please submit one type. So if you click on that drop-down, Haley, so you have the options of activities modification, budget, or demographics. So if anything needs to change in the scope of work, please attach one workbook or one type of modification per submission. So if you have like activities and a budget one that you need to do, then you would do 2 separate modification requests. There's more detailed information in the OFCY.org/Cityspan. There's a webinar that we recorded on how to do the workbooks. So take a look at that, and if you still don't understand it, feel free to contact me.
Yeah, and so just to
at
show
the bottom
you
of the
that
page.
webinar is the second one posted down here.
Yep.
Okay, great.
One thing for the scope of work activities, when you look at your sort of aerial view of all the activities that are created for 1819, like Haley said, a lot of things have been copied over from 1718. But take a look, because I know that sometimes program models change and activities change and when you're going to hold the sessions change. So take a close look at these. The way it's broken down, it's by location, average session participants, the sessions per quarter, as well as the average hours per session. And it all calculates to something that we call units of service. And the way I like to think about it is service hours multiplied by the youth receiving them. So if you have, like for the one that Haley's in right now, conflict resolution 1819, the average session participants is 1 because it's an individual activity. It's actually hard-coded. There's going to be 12 sessions that are going to be half an hour. So it's 1 times 12 times 0.5. That's how the system calculates that 6 units of service. But yeah, take a look at this. Make sure that if you have activities that are created that you know you will not be using, you have to go through a modification process to delete those because there are projections or benchmarks tied to them. So if you have activities that you aren't going to use this year that maybe you did last year, you want to go through the modifications process, let your grant manager know that, hey, we're not using these activities anymore. We're going to replace them with XYZ, because if you just create the XYZ, you'll have to link them with additional projections. So you're setting your benchmarks high because you'll have no actuals to measure up against those projected, and then you may be flagged for underperformance or something like that. So you want to make sure that your scope of work is set up correctly to accurately reflect what you're doing, what you're not doing, when you're doing it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to just finish the contract portion of the website, which is the scope of work, progress reports, and modifications, and then we'll jump into the details of tracking your participants and activities. So just to show you the progress reports, as we've mentioned, all grantees have to submit quarterly progress reports. So for summer, there's just 1 quarter, so you just submit the first quarter progress report. And then for everybody else, there's the full 4 quarters of the year. And so each progress report is a set of these 4 forms. Narrative, stats. Stats is what pulls the details from your activities and attendance. The invoice, so that's how you invoice against your budget. And then the sign-off, which is for the agency's signatory to submit. You'll see there's a couple of requirements here. Is in order to submit this form, you have to first complete all 3 of these forms first. The invoice has to be submitted by a financial user. And the sign-off, in order to sign off, you have to be logged in as the signatory's account. So there's only 1 signatory per agency, and you have to use that person's account and sign off with that account. You can't sign off on behalf of the signatory. So let's just look at the invoice. Okay, so for each quarter, there's just 1 column. You have to go in and input your quarterly expenses per line item. So again, this reflects your budget exactly. So all line items in your budget have to have an amount entered for each quarter. So even if you aren't billing against the line item, you just have to enter 0. This red line, okay, let me turn my volume up. Let's see, is that better? Okay, I'll keep going. Let me know if it's still low, and I'll try to adjust it again. Okay, so as I was saying, these fields with the red line in them mean they're required. So that means you have to have a value in every one of these fields. You have to upload a file for supporting documentation in order to submit this form. So you will have to do this each quarter. You have to be sure to complete it, upload a file, and then it has to, again, be submitted by a financial user, not the signatory. And then when you submit, and then you'll be able to submit. Okay, and so let's see. Oh, well, I'll show you stats. We don't have any attendance in the system for the 18-19 year, so you should see a lot of zeros. This page just updates as you are entering attendance throughout the quarter. So if you check it periodically, your numbers will probably look low, which is okay. But when it comes time to submit this form, you're going to want to see, hopefully your actuals have met your projected numbers for each activity. In the event that your actuals are lower than your projections, there is a justification line where you have to explain why your numbers were lower. And that will happen, let's see. So in this case, everything is below, again, because we haven't really been entering information for this year yet. So that is what you'll want to check for everything when you're actually submitting the quarterly report.
There was a question regarding the invoice about who is a financial user, because it can't be the signatory. So there's some checks and balances in the Cityspan system that the signatory or the person that signs the contract with the City of Oakland cannot be the same person that submits the invoice, because our fiscal department wanted some checks and balances built into the system. So depending on your organizational structure, you may not have an accountant. Like I know some smaller organizations that don't necessarily have a set financial person, but it just has to be someone other than the signatory. So I guess there's an assumption that it's someone with some accounting function who will enter the numbers in the invoice, but that may or may not apply to your organization.
Okay, thank you. The last thing I wanted to point out about the progress reports is that in quarter 3, each agency has to submit a match form. So you'll see it's only available in quarter 3. Okay, here we go. So you have to upload documentation for 25% of your grant award. So this is required for all grantees, except for summer. You do have to do your match in quarter 1, but for everybody running year 1, you'll have this in quarter 3, and it's a requirement. You have to complete this in order to submit the quarter 3 report.
So
anything you want to add about that?
Yeah, that total projected match number down there below the total amount, that's actually being pulled from your scope of work budget. So the way the budget is set up, there's 3 main columns: total project budget, the amount you want OFCY to cover, and then the system calculates the other sources of funding that you'll use to cover the entire program cost. So we want you to line item all $65,000 in this example, but you only have to submit documentation for $25,000, because in this example, it's a $100,000 grant. So the minimum 25% documentation request is we want you to submit at least 25,000. Like if you did a source of like SF Foundation and the amount was $25,000 and type of funding was philanthropic grants, then you should upload something from the SF Foundation, and there's actually a link in the help text that gives you a little bit more detail in the requirements of what type of documentation we're looking for. But in addition to line iteming $25,000 from SF Foundation, we want to also see, you could click that add match button and you can add as many lines as you want, but we want to see, where does all $65,000 come from? You don't necessarily have to upload supporting docs for the remaining like $40,000 worth of matching funds, but we do want to see where those dollars are coming from. We use this in our evaluation reports to justify to City Council and the public, saying that, hey, we give out $14 million a year to Children and Youth Services in Oakland, but look at that. All our grantees bring in an additional $20 million from all these different types of funding. This is why we capture this information.
Okay, great. All right, so that wraps up everything in the contracting portion of the site, but feel free to send in any remaining questions you have about the scope of work, progress reports, and modifications. We'll keep an eye on those. So tracking your actual participants and activities, this is what will take up the majority of your day-to-day time in Cityspan. So in order to record attendance for any participant, we have to have a participant record in Cityspan. And same with activities, any participant you've ever entered in Cityspan from last year or before, depending how long you've been a grantee, will still be in Cityspan. We never delete participants for you. We won't edit their records. Everything that's in your site currently is a reflection of what staff have entered over the years when it comes to the participants and the activities. So to view who you currently have entered for youth, again, if you're a child care grantee, you'll have to enter adults as well, but most strategies are only entering youth or staff. You can click on any of these links and you'll get the full list. This is a demo site, so there's a lot of duplication. There's a lot of fake, silly names, but your list will look more realistic. You might have multiple pages. We filter this by who is active. So this active status is relative to Cityspan only. It's just a way to manage your data, really. So if you mark a person inactive, their record is maintained, but they won't show up in your list of participants by default, and they won't be able to be enrolled in activities. So that may have happened, again, just because some of these have been grantees for a long time. You could have had participants come back and leave, and you may have inactivated them. You can view who's inactive by setting this status toggle up here. And this will be totally different for everybody. Some sites maybe have never inactivated anybody, others probably have. But just as you're getting back into it for the year, it's a good idea to review who you have entered in the system. Obviously, if you have new intakes that have just come in, you have to create those people in Cityspan. If you need to update anybody, you can do that at any time. You just click their name from the list, and you'll see their this is their personal registration form. So any data that's been entered in the past, again, is still here. We do not ever edit your data. So you're able to edit it. Like I said, you can make selections at any time. You can add contact information for parents. There's this optional other tab that you can fill in transportation pickup permissions. Again, this is just if you have this information available, if it's relative to you, you can enter it here. This is really just for your own use. Okay, so this is for everybody who's already in Cityspan. There's a link to the grant policies for the OFCY release form. So you do have to have a release form on file to have these participants participating in your program.
Haley, would you mind clicking on that?
Oh, sure.
Or just going to our website now. And if you scroll down, there's a section called Release of Information. And we have some help text there, as well as you can download the consent of release. If the child is under 18 or the youth is under 18, you have to have a parent or caregiver or guardian sign on their behalf. If the child is a youth, and for OFCY purposes, we serve ages 0 to 20, as mentioned before. So even if they're 18, 19, 20, they could sign on their own behalf. Or if you're an early childhood program serving adult participants, they can also sign on their own behalf. Once again, you need to have this on file before you create anyone in Cityspan, because part of the release is, yes, I give permission to the grantee to enter my information into Cityspan, as well as I will participate in like evaluation surveys.
Okay, great. Okay, so again, anybody who's already entered in Cityspan should have all that on file. for your new for your new participants that you've received the release for, you have to manually enter them in Cityspan. And so you do so by coming to participants and staff on the left-hand side and then clicking the Add Person tab. And so you'll select youth for the most cases, and then if you have adults, you'll create the separate adult profile, which I'll show in a minute. So you'll see, because I clicked youth, there's these 6 required fields. You have to have this information in order to create the person. You cannot proceed from this page, and a record won't be saved without having all of these filled out. So just know that ahead of time. There is a little bit of data entry you have to do. So it should go fairly quick. And then click Add Youth when you're done. So at this point, we have a message saying we've registered this person. And if we click View Record, that will take us to the longer full registration form for Jim. If you have multiple people to create at once, you can skip that for now and just go back through this form and add your next person. So let's just do one more. And just to show you, if I click View Record for Hannah, we're directed straight into her record. Everything we just entered is populated here. And this is where you're able to complete additional information if you have it for her. We'll click No there. Okay, so let's look at the adult form. Again, only relative for child care grantees. Any adults you've created in the past will still be here. So it's similar. There's a couple of different questions on the form. There's general contact information rather than family contact and an emergency contact. So again, anything beyond, for adults, you're prompted to enter all of this when you create them. So you would only need to come in and add additional information if you have it. Okay, and
just to clarify, none of that is required. Just the fields with the star. It's the same 5 or 6 fields for both adult and youth participants. First name, last name, date of birth, gender, race, ethnicity, and zip. Everything else, it's for your own purposes. If you want to track it in Cityspan, you can. If you track it in some other system, that's fine too.
okay. And I meant to show you this with the youth, but it's the same for the adult. This enrollment tab, again, will show you their history of enrollment. So if they've been a participant for multiple years, you'll see their full enrollment history here. And it will update as you enroll them in new activities for the current year. But this is a nice reference for viewing a participant's history, as well as what they're actively enrolled in. All right, the last type of person you can register is staff. So program staff are associated with activities. For individual activities and internships, it is required in order to even enter attendance to have staff assigned to the activities. So because those records are meant to take place between a staff and a participant. So you have to have a staff record in order to assign them to activities, and for individuals and internship activities, those staff have to be assigned to the activities, and then you can enter attendance, which we'll go through. But just to show you the staff registration form. So again, we have these required fields that are asked by OFCY plus one additional requirement, which is, are you an Oakland resident? And then there's a list of different, well, there's contact information, some start dates, driver's license information. This is all optional, but again, if you have it, you can fill it out here. And I'll just show you adding a staff. So your staff from last year will still be in the system, but if you have new people who are working in your activities this year, you'll just need to add them as a program staff. And then you see that you have your 5 required fields entered here. Okay, so please, and again, you can do this throughout the year. So I know as you're getting set up, there's the initial data entry of just entering everybody who's new. But obviously, if you have participants come, later in the summer, or sorry, later in the school year, in the second half of the year, you just need to add them to Cityspan as you receive their intakes and their releases. And same with staff. You can do this at any point throughout the year. Okay, so I'm going to move into activities, but please send in any questions you have about the participant registration. So we showed you this briefly when we were looking at the scope of work. So you'll see a couple of things here. Again, because we've copied over so much information, you do still see the 17-18 activities. And so there's a filter that is applied to these activity pages, which we call the current term. Most likely, if you've set this, you probably have it set for the previous fiscal year. You can edit this at any time, and you can set it to any length of time. So for summer grantees, you can set it to just the summer period. For full year grantees, you can set it to start in August or September, whenever your programs actually start. But to show you how to change that, you would go to the Utilities tab and click the Set Service Term link. And I'm just going to update this for the new fiscal year, so that would be July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. But you can see you're able to type in any date range. So we could have made this just for the first half of the year if we wanted, or just for the current month. You can update at any point too. So when we click Set Term, we get a message saying this is what our new begin and end date is. And when we go back to the group activities page, we have this page now filtered to only activities that take place during this time range. We didn't delete anything, but if you click all, and again, this is a demo site, so it has a lot of old activities in it, you'll see every activity that you've ever tracked in Cityspan for OFCY. So all your data is still here. We just give you this option to filter it because obviously year over year, your activity list can get very long. So these are the activities that were copied. Obviously, the site gets used for testing, so there's been other activities added. But we're going to focus on these two because these are the ones that were copied from 2017-18. They don't have a date range because you are expected to go in and add your own schedule. That's part of the data entry you have to do each year. So you'll have your list of copied activities available here, and they will not have schedules. So let's go into adding the schedule. Okay, so you'll have your projections are copied from the scope of work. I know these are zeros, so yours will have actual numbers in them. You'll have a location and a category and your projections set here. This is where you add your staff. So if you click Edit, this list pulls from who are active program staff under the Participants and Staff tab. So if you're trying to assign staff and someone's missing, you just need to go back to Participants and Staff, add them as a program staff person, and then when you open this page again, your list will update with a new person. Okay. And so, yes, just to confirm, setting that service term it's just a filter. It doesn't change any of your data. So any of your attendance from the past, any of the enrollment activities will all stay the same. Okay, so let's assign our staff person. And so you can see that once you assign someone, you still have the option to assign another staff person. And so you're able to assign as many support or volunteer staff as needed. Just the first person, you can only assign one person with the lead staff title. So assign everybody who's working in your activity and then click Return. And to add the schedule, we'll click Edit. Your schedule needs to reflect the actual days that your program meets. So when we create the schedule, we're also creating one attendance sheet for every date that is scheduled. So it needs to be as accurate as possible in order to have accurate attendance entered. And you can enter single dates. So if you have a field trip or maybe a group outing that is part of your funding for OFCY, you'll want to record those, and it's fine to add them as their own activity just as a single date. They should be in your scope of work. So if you don't have them set up already, again, modify your scope of work. But if you had those same activities last year and you're going to be doing the same types of outings, it's fine to just schedule one single day and record the people who came on that day. For your longer activities that run throughout the year, you would add multiple dates. Okay, so let's say we're starting August 20th and we're going through, I'm going to say this is a full year after school activity that we're running. So I'm going to say it ends in late May. So you set your start and end date, and then you need to set each day of the week that you meet. So if you're running 5 days a week, you need to select a begin and end time from Monday through Friday. If you're Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you would only select for those 3 days, and so on. So we have a long list of times because you're able to select down to 5-minute increments. Just a quick shortcut to tell you, if you hit the first number of the time you're trying to select, so I'm going to say this starts at 2 o'clock, I can just click the number 2 on my keyboard and it will jump down to the number 2 for me. So it'll save you just a little bit of scrolling. And then same for the end time. If this runs until 3:30, I can hit the number 3 and then find 3:30 down here. So that should help you get through that pretty quickly. Okay, so let's do to 3:30 for both days. And, okay, let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday for our after school activity. And this is a group, so this is meant to be set up for the same group of students are expected to be attending this activity. If you have a group of students that are attending on different days, that would be a separate activity. So the group of students you enroll should stay mostly consistent throughout the year per activity. Obviously, you can add and remove as needed, but think about who you're servicing in each activity when you're enrolling them, because you want your attendance sheets to be accurate too. So, and then, okay, so we just scheduled from August through May, so we have a long list of all the dates. You have multiple pages up here. After you schedule everything, it's a good idea to delete any holidays you might have. So let's see, Labor Day should be around here. If you select a date, and then we'll have winter break in December, but let's just select one date. You click delete. So you only want to do this in the event that you will not have programming on this day, because deleting a date deletes the attendance sheet that's associated with it. And so I like to recommend deleting holidays as you set up your schedule, just because it'll help you later on with managing your attendance sheets. So we'll go ahead and if you have any present records, so if attendance had been taken for this day, it would tell you how many people are present. And this is a warning saying if you delete this, you're deleting that attendance. And if you didn't mean to do that, the only option is to re-enter it. We can't recover data for you. If you delete anything that you didn't mean to delete, you have to re-enter it. So that's why we have this big red and yellow warning page. But again, if you know it's a holiday or a cancellation, we have the ability to delete for that purpose. So just go through your list and delete any holidays you have. Let's click return. And once you're done with that, you'll see that the schedule populates based on what you've just entered. The status changes. It says pending because August 20th is a future date. Once we hit August 20th, the status will say in session, I think. And then if it's in the past, it'll say in the past. It's just the status, it changes automatically. It's nothing you can edit. All right, so once your schedule is set, you can enroll your participants. And you do have to do this for every activity. So as I was saying, the enrollment in each activity, again, should reflect the same set of students being serviced in the same activity. if that set of students is different for different activities, you would enroll them in another activity. So for this after school demo or group activity demo, let's click to enroll. So you can find students or participants in a few different ways. You can search one by one just by typing in a first and last name. You can go to the person type and select youth participants, and that will show you all the youth participants you have registered. If you click all, it will show you, again, depending on if you have adults, it'll show you a list of all youth and adults that have been registered. But when you're setting up your activities in the beginning of the year, I think the easiest way is to select by person type, because let's say this is a youth activity, so we want to be able to enroll as many youth as we need. And then you can easily just scroll through this list and select everybody who needs to be enrolled. So this is faster than looking them up one by one. You can also select all if everybody you've registered is participating in this particular activity. I'll just select a few more. Okay. And so once you've selected everybody, click Next Step. This page shows us the enrollment date, which is specific to this activity only. So your students or participants can be enrolled in as many activities as they're actually participating in. There's no restriction on how many activities they participate in. So just keep that in mind as you're enrolling them. If they are going to be participating in something else, this enrollment date is specific to this activity that you're working on right now. And this means that for attendance purposes, the first date you can take attendance for Corey and all these participants is on August 20th. If you are enrolling students who you know won't start on the first date, you can edit this here. So if you know students will be starting on the second week of programming, just change it to August 27th or whatever date you know that they'll be coming for the first time. And you don't have to do this here. You can do this later, but it is available at the time you enroll in case you know that you can change their start date now. So click Next Step. This conflict, this is happening because you saw those other activities that were already created. So it's saying that these 3 students are enrolled during the same time, the same day and time in these other activities, which is allowable. This is just a notification for you. We don't prevent you from doing that. So let's say that's okay. We know that's happening. We want these students to still be enrolled in this activity despite that. So we'll select their names and click Next Step. Okay, and that's a confirmation page. Okay, and when you click Confirm, it takes you back to the enrollment page in case you need to enroll anybody else. So you could go through this process again. Once you've enrolled participants in an activity, you can't enroll them again. So everybody we just selected will no longer be in this list. To view the persons who have been enrolled, you click the Enrollment tab. So now we're back in our regular environment. And this Enrollment tab that was blank before has now been populated with everybody we just enrolled. If you ever need to edit, so if they stopped attending or if they actually started on a different date, you can click Edit to the right of their name. And this brings you into a page where you can drop them or unenroll them. Unenrolling is deleting, and so that's what this long chunk of text is saying down here. You would only delete a participant if they never attended the activity. If they attend even just once, you want to drop them because dropping maintains their attendance records, but unenrolling deletes them. So if you have attendance on a person, don't unenroll them. You want to drop them so that way you maintain their records of when they did attend. But there are cases where someone may have signed up and never actually came, so you need to remove them from your enrollment list, and that's why we have this feature. But for the most part, you'll probably be dropping students who stop attending. So you click the Edit button to get to this page where you can drop them. And to drop, you just enter the date of the last day they attended. So if we started in August, let's say the student just came for about a month and then stopped. Select the last date they attended because the student will be on the attendance sheet through this date. So that means from August 20th through September 14th, Corey Adams was on your attendance list for all of those days that are scheduled. And then after September 14th, so starting the next Monday, you won't see Corey on your attendance sheets anymore. Let's click return. And so this has been populated now that they've been dropped. And if you look at your enrollment list, Corey is we still have the record of Corey because he should have attendance between August and September. But to make this list to keep it as up to date as possible, the dropped students are grayed out and moved to the bottom. So if you have a long list of enrollment, I think we show 25 per page and then it moves into the second page. You may have multiple pages here. So if you're trying to find somebody and it looks like they're not enrolled, just be sure you're clicking through all the pages.
We have a question that says, can you talk about duplicate students? What's the best way to go about removing them?
Okay. So if you notice you have duplicates in your youth participant list, which in this demo site, we have multiple people with the same names. We don't have an automated process that can merge students for you. So you need to do a manual check to see which student has either the most accurate information and also which student has the most enrollment. Well, this was a bad example. Let me look at someone who has all their information filled out. Because when you delete a person, if you delete a person, you're deleting all of their enrollment and attendance history too. So before you do that, you want to be sure that anything that was captured on a duplicate record has now been re-entered on the record you're keeping. And so that's the process you have to go through, is find the enrollment and attendance. In some cases, you might have duplicate records, but one was never enrolled in anything. And so that makes it really easy for you. You can delete the one without enrollment. Just be sure you've updated all their intake information on the record you're keeping. But if both records have enrollment, you will need to re-enroll them, enroll the record you're keeping into the activities and re-enter the attendance. So that way you don't lose the record of that. And if that happens, which it's fairly common, you can always call our help desk and we can walk you through it. We can recommend some reports that will help you. Make sure you have all the data that you need to re-enter. Yeah, we do that quite a lot. So if you're needing to go through that process, you can give us a call.
So ideally, it's to prevent it from happening initially, right? So before you create a new participant, usually you want to search for them just to make sure that they're not already created in your list of participants.
Yeah, and if you do create someone with the exact same name as a participant who's already in the system, you will get a warning page. So it does say, it will show you the other person that says, this record already exists. Are you sure you want to create another record? So just be sure to read those. There are situations where you have, two participants with the same name, but just be sure you're actually entering a new person if you get that message. Okay, so while we were going through enrollment, Scott asked me to show you how to edit your projections. So he went through the process of unlocking the scope of work activities. And so now you can see I have extra edit buttons that I didn't have before. So if I click, if I click either one, it will take me to, so it takes me to the page where I can select a location. And your locations are created over here on the left menu tab. And I can select the activity category. You can only select one. And then this section at the bottom is where I enter projections. So if this is, again, what I enter here populates into the scope of work up here. So this is what you will see when you're needing to either change or add new projections in a new activity. Okay, so let's say projected.
Just to add something, so for the projected number of youth participants per session, be realistic in your projection. So even if you plan to enroll 20 youth per activity, um, maybe from history and from actual experience, you know that about 15 come. So instead of typing in 20, I would recommend that you type in a more realistic projected number of youth that actually come to each session. So once again, in my example, if you plan to enroll 20 youth, but from history and experience, you know that about 15 of them will show up every single day because kids get sick, they have other appointments, so on and so forth. You want to project out realistically which youth or the number of youth that will actually be present for a session.
Okay, great. And then you do need to break down by quarter how many sessions you will have. And this should match your schedule. So if you've already set up your schedule and you should know how many sessions you scheduled. Now you need to just enter the number of sessions you'll be having per quarter. Okay, so let's say we're doing 15 sessions per quarter, but obviously this could change. If it's shorter in the second quarter, enter fewer. If it's going to be longer in the spring, enter more. So it should reflect your actual programming. And then hours per session, again, so this needs to be entered as whole numbers. So if it's 1 hour, enter a 1. If it's 30 minutes like we have here, you would enter 0.5 for half an hour. And so I'll say we're going to do 1 hour per session. So let's return. And so now on this page, all of these have been updated. And so at this point, Scott, do you expect the grantee to just call or email you to tell you that they're done updating?
Yeah, so if you need to update any projections, you have to go through the modifications process, through the modifications tab. You submit a workbook about what's changing. Your grant manager reviews it, either approves it or denies it, and he or she may provide you comments on why. And then at that point, the grant manager will actually unlock the scope of work for you to make the actual edits. And then once you do, then you should resubmit the scope of work activities when you're done with all your edits or reprojections, and then you should let your grant manager know so that she can make his or her final review. One thing to say, the quarterly sessions populate the projections for the progress report stats. So that's why we make you break it out by quarter, because those are your quarterly projections that we're going to hold you to in the progress report stats. That's why it's important to get sort of an accurate projection of the number of sessions by quarter, because once again, that's the benchmark that you're setting for yourself for your quarterly progress reports.
Okay. And just to show you again, once you're done making your edits, you can come to the scope of work. Since activities was open, it says not submitted, and now you have the ability to submit. And you'll see that it updates according to what you've just changed. So you don't have to change anything on this form, but it will just pull the changes you've made. So this is what we just entered for our demo activity. And then click submit. Okay, so we just went through the process of editing projections, adding a schedule, enrolling participants. Again, this is all sort of initial setup that you do, but on a regular basis, what you'll really be entering in Cityspan is attendance. So let's take a look at that now, and then I'll move on to the other activity types just to give you a quick overview, and then we'll wrap up with a few reports that are handy. Okay, so once you have your schedule and your enrollment entered in an activity, you can enter attendance. And so we have a list of dates that have been scheduled. The number of people in the total column is based on enrollment per day. So it fluctuates because on some days we have more people enrolled than others according to when they started in the activity. So you'll see fluctuation in this number throughout the year, and that's completely expected. So to take attendance, you just click on a date, and you're taken into a screen where you have a list. Again, these people are only listed because they've been enrolled starting on August 20th. If they weren't enrolled on this day, you won't see them until you get to their actual start date in the activity. And for every person, you need to enter either present or absent on a daily basis, so every day that's scheduled. I like to recommend using the All Present button because this makes sure you don't miss anybody, and it allows you to just quickly go through and select anybody who is absent. And if you're entering your attendance maybe at the end of the week, you can kind of quickly click Save in Next Day to get to the next scheduled date. We have these attendance sheets here that you can print on a daily basis. And if this is your first time using Cityspan, you'll likely get a pop-up warning. So you just need to click to allow. And it shouldn't happen after the first time. So this is a PDF, so it will open in your PDF. Sorry, Firefox made an update. There we go. Will open in whichever PDF software you have. So this is a single day attendance sheet. It is only for the day of attendance that we were looking at. So this is just for Wednesday, August 22nd for our demo activity, and then it has everybody who's enrolled on this day. So this is a way to print just one attendance sheet for one day and one activity. You can print these for more than one activity or more than one day at a time, which I'll show you. But this is one way to get this sheet, print it if you prefer to keep, if you prefer to take attendance by hand, just keep these on file and then come back into Cityspan, maybe once a week at least, and enter your attendance in Cityspan.
So we have a question that says, is there a deadline for entering activities for each quarter? And if the question is regarding entering attendance for activities, the attendance does lock on the quarterly progress report. So if you remember on the login page, we had the progress report due dates. And so for quarter one, it was like October 12th. It's usually the second Friday after quarter end. So quarter one, it's July, August, September. And then the second, so the quarter ends September 30th. And then the reports are due October 12th, which is the second Friday after the quarter ends. So the attendance does lock on October 12th for quarter one. So you want to enter attendance regularly, just like Haley just said. Don't wait until the end of the quarter to try to enter 3 months of attendance. You want to do it weekly, bi-weekly, I think monthly at the minimum, so that you can also catch errors, because you don't want to be entering attendance on October 11th because you're trying to make the due date and then realize, hey, how come some of my attendance data isn't being captured in the progress report stats? Just to give yourself time to catch maybe attendance errors or issues that may come up, you want to do it regularly. If the question is there a deadline for entering activities or creating activities? You can't enter attendance unless activities are set up in Cityspan. So you should do that immediately so that you can actually enter the attendance for the activities you're actually holding. So those should be set up ASAP.
Okay, thank you. All right, so for the days we just entered attendance, you can see our present column has updated. So these are the number of people we've just marked present. This is just a reference for you. It does help you know where you are in the attendance process. So if you are entering attendance weekly or every 2 weeks, when you come in, you can quickly see, okay, starting on August 24th, I have through whatever the current date is to get up to date. It doesn't have an impact on anything else. It's really just a tool for you to know what the status of your attendance is. And it turns green if you've marked everybody present or absent. If you miss anybody, it will be orange. So let me just show you that. Just for whatever reason, if you don't finish attendance for the day, this column would be orange. So that's something to look for when you are coming in and doing attendance. If anything through the current date is not green, you should go back to that date and complete it. Okay, so for those of you who have multiple activities running on a day, you can enter attendance for more than one activity at a time. I think that's helpful in some cases and not helpful in other cases. It depends how you have your staff entering attendance. If you have one person doing attendance for all activities, then I think that's a useful tool. Otherwise, if you are only responsible for your own activity, there's no need to try to enter in bulk. But just to show you, this view by date tab will allow you to select any date that's scheduled. This is also limited by the current term. So this is showing every date from July 1st through June 30th. If you click any date right now, actually I think we do have more than one. It will show you everybody who's enrolled in any activity on this day. So if you mark them present here, they will be marked present in all activities. Keep that in mind. But I just want to show you that this is another option. If you have a lot of activities and you have the same enrollment in them, you can enter attendance this way rather than going into each activity every day. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the other types of activities. I won't spend as much time on these since the concepts are similar, especially with individual activities, but I just want to show you. So if you are a grantee running, these, again, are meant to be one-on-one staff to participant interactions. You will see that you have, again, your activities from 17-18 have been copied forward into 18-19. And if I look at case management, again, this was a sample, so our projections are blank, but your projections won't be blank. The difference here is you don't create a schedule for these activities. You just enter sessions as they happen. So this is where it's required to have a staff person in order to even enter attendance. So first step in your individual activities is to assign your staff. So click Edit. And this is the same process as with a group activity. Select the staff person from the drop-down. If you need to add a staff person, do that under Participants and Staff. In this case, for case management, you would assign every case manager who's working with your participants. So let's say we have these two. And once you've done that, you can enter attendance. So the attendance entry looks completely different from the group activity. You go to the Add button. And so this is based on visits. So again, these like one-on-one interactions, we want to know who the staff person was, how long did they meet with the participant, and then who was the participant. So you have to select a staff person. And this is why you have to assign a staff person to the individual activity. This dropdown will be blank if no one is assigned to this activity. So we select the staff, the date of the visit, let's say August 20th, and then enter a total for hours and minutes. If it was a half an hour, enter a 0 in the hours box and then a 30 for minutes. And for your participant, so this is just adding one record. You can add, we have a couple of tools here. So let's say Hector has 3 sessions he'd like to enter for Marie. If you enter the first date, select Marie's name, then click Add Record and hold name. Everything stays the same. So we still have Marie selected. We still have Hector. We can just now change the date and then the number of hours and minutes if they're different and add a second record. So this is how you can, through the individual module, enter attendance fairly quickly for more than one day at a time. Let's just do one more for Marie. And then if I add record this time, it will take me, this is the details of what I've just added. So it's just, you know, who the staff person is, the participant, the date, and the time spent. The only details are if you want to record notes, but those aren't required. Okay, so just to show you again, if you're going to enter more attendance for another participant or another staff person, actually let me back out of here. So this is from our attendance tab in the case management activity. We've just entered these 3 records for Marie, so now we have a list. And to add new records for someone else, we would click Add. Okay. So let's do a different staff person. We can also say this happened on August 20th, and let's say this session lasted for an hour. So I will add a few records for a different participant this time. So let's add some records for Mary. If I click Add Record and hold Name, Mary remains selected, and now I can add the next date that I met with Mary. So let's say I met with her on Monday and then Tuesday. So let's just click Add Record and hold again. And let's add a third record, let's say for Friday. So I'll click Add Record this time. And this is the last record that we just created. And if I go back to the attendance list, you can see now I have those 3 records for Mary added to the list. And so these minutes add up into your hours that are recorded in your progress reports. So that works the same way as with the group activities. All of this will be reflected in the progress report. Okay, so send in any questions as you have them. So it's the same process. If you have another activity, you would assign the staff, add attendance as it happens. And then if there's additional activities you need to add, you would go through the modification to do that here as well. Okay, early childhood and mental health consultation. This is restricted by strategy, so I will just show you. Sorry, this will be locked for you. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a view of this. So your projections have been copied from 2017-18. So whichever sites and projections you have per site from last year, you'll have this listed here. And at this point, you just need to review them and make sure they're accurate. If you have no changes, you don't need to do anything else. If you have changes, you have to go through the modification process. So same with the other activity types. And then when it comes time to enter your attendance, in this case, they're just called actuals because they're the number of consultation hours that happen in each quarter. You enter them on these tabs. And so you will have, for each site location, so I think most of the grantees have multiple sites, you'll have this section repeated multiple times on the page per site location. And per staff person, you just enter the number of hours, the total number of hours they had in the quarter. And then when you submit this, this pulls into your progress report. Okay. And the last type is internships and subsidized employment. So this looks more like the group activity setup. It's kind of a hybrid between a group and an individual. So you'll have these copied. This is, again, restricted by strategy, so a lot of you will not even see this. But just to let you know, in case you are a grantee, we copied your activity. Your projections will all be here, same as before. And so this is where it's kind of similar to an individual activity. You assign staff first. You don't create a schedule. Okay. And at that point, you can start recording attendance. So attendance in this case is actually hours worked and the payment made to the youth. So it's a little different concept, but this is for employment purposes. So you'll want to record, you can record a single day, and if that's what you're doing, then you can do the same date for each. So let's say August 20th as a start and date, and then enter the hours worked on that day and the total payment made. And you have to do this for each youth. And so the fields are different, but the process is the same. So if you were trying to enter multiple records for Claire, again, you could click Add Record, hold name, and then you have to change the encounter period. So let's say if she worked on, let's add a Wednesday of that week. Change the hours if she worked a different number of hours. So maybe she worked a half a day on the Wednesday, and then change the payment amount. And so if you add record and hold name, that would let you add another record for Claire. Or if you're done, just click Add Record. And then if you had another person, oh, sorry, let's finish this up. Yep, okay, so these are the two records we just added for Claire. Again, it's similar, it looks a little different. We have the date, the total hours, and the gross payment. And this does, again, get pulled into your progress report for the quarter that this took place in.
Just to clarify, this activity type is only for those programs in the OFCY strategy, career awareness, and academic support. It's our older youth, so if you're not in that strategy, you won't have this option. And also, Haley, can you, for the date range, we should not cross over quarters, right?
Right, because we want them to all be counted in a single quarter.
So in the date range, so let's say you have a timesheet or something from September 20th to October 15th. So because those occur in two separate OFCY quarters, quarter one for September 20th to September 30th, and then quarter two, October 1 to October 15, you would have to break up that entry into two entries. That's
okay.
all.
Thank you. Yeah, so feel free to send in any more questions. I'm going to wrap up by showing you a couple of reports. So we have a long list of reports that are available to you. I just want to highlight the ones that I think you'll probably be using the most. So first is, you have to scroll down a bit. And sorry, we're actually updating for the 2018-19 year. We'll have those ready in the next couple of days. But this progress report stats shows you basically the same information that you see in your actual progress report. It's a little more detailed, and it allows you to look at multiple quarters at a time, because the progress report you submit is only for one quarter at a time, so you can't compare across easily. So I'll show you this. I know this is for older activities, but it will look the same way for 18-19. And so your quarter selections are up here, so starting with start and end date for each quarter. So if you want to run for more than one quarter, you would change your end date down here. So if I do July through December, this is Q1 and Q2 of 17-18. Click Generate. And so here we have, by activity type, we have our groups. We have a listing of the service categories and their projections per category, and then all group activities listed here with their details. So projections and actuals side by side. And then you can just scroll down through the report to see your individual activities, your consultation hours if you have them, and your internship hours if you have them, and then overall totals. And so this is an easy way to check your status throughout the year or at any point in the quarter. You can run this, and our reports update immediately. There's no lag between attendance entry and the data you see in your reports. So this is true for the progress reports, the left menu progress reports as well. They are always a live reflection of what you've entered, unless you've submitted the progress report. So like Scott had said, your attendance locks down each quarter. So once the attendance locks, you're not going to see changes in that quarterly progress report. But if you run this report, it will show you, through the current date, all attendance you've entered, as long as you included that in the date range. And that's the case for our other attendance reports. So we have a lot of reports that aren't OFCY grant specific. These are, so like these attendance reports here. These are just a reflection of the data you've entered in Cityspan. So you can use these however they're useful just to monitor your attendance. There's, let's see, I like attendance by date because it just shows you for every day that's scheduled. So we started with August 20th. You can run these for any time period. So if you want to run this once a week, you could run this every day, once a month. You can select any date range. Sorry, I meant to hit 31. And it will just show you the dates in this time period. So these are all the dates that we've scheduled. And these are the total youth enrolled. And so you can, this gives you just a quick snapshot. This is across all your activities. So without having to click into every activity to see if you've entered attendance, you can see that, okay, on the 27th, the 28th, the 30th, I have nobody marked present. So I probably haven't, that means I haven't entered any attendance for those days. And this is a good way to, you can either relay this to your staff, or if you're the person who enters the attendance, you can keep this handy and know which dates you need to go back and complete attendance for. We have similar reports that just kind of show you a different view. So attendance by service gives you the breakdown of every activity you have. So if you want to check specifically in an activity, am I up to date? I would run attendance by service. And then attendance by participant is even more granular level of, I want to see by every person enrolled how many present records they have. Attendance by participant will show you that. Okay, and then lastly, I mentioned we have a few ways of printing sign-in sheets. And, okay, I guess, yeah. So we have this single day, let's start here. Single day attendance sheet. This is the same sheet I showed you that I ran from the activity, but this will let you run for more than one activity at a time. So let's do August 27th. You can generate these ahead of time. So if you know this is the sheet you'll be using to take attendance, you can run a bunch of them right now and print them and just have them ready to go. As long as your activity is scheduled, these attendance sheets are available for you. And then you can select which activities to include. So if you don't need to see attendance for all of these, you can just select the ones that apply to you. So let's do 4 of them. Click generate. And so this looks similar. There's not an absent column on here. But so this is, it usually works out to be 1 page per activity. So this is the group activity demo. I go to the next page. This is for knitting. And I don't have any other activities because I didn't have any other activities scheduled on this date. So again, this sheet can only generate if the activity is scheduled. Otherwise, you'll get a message saying there's no activity scheduled for this day. And then one last sign-in sheet. If you would like to run a sign-in sheet for more than 1 day, we have this multi-day attendance sheet. So you select the first date, so let's do August 27th again, and you can run this for up to 10 days. So let's say we want to run this for 5 days, so for basically 1 week, and I want to include my basketball and my group activity demo. And so you'll see that the only sign-in sheets that are available are for group activities because the attendance entry for individual and the other activities is different. So you'll only see your group activities listed here. And okay, so this is an example of if you don't have dates scheduled, you will have, like the basketball demo was not scheduled on the first date of this activity, or sorry, for the whole date range of this report. But our demo activity was. So we have 1 column per date. It's just a simple checkbox. There's not a lot of space for notes, but if you don't require a sign-in or notes, this is a good sheet. Cuts down on paper. You can print it, like I said, for up to 10 days, and you can keep this handy. And then once it's done, you can go into Cityspan and enter your attendance. Okay, so there's a lot of information available here. Feel free to run any of them. They never change your data. They just reflect what's in the system. If you have questions about them, feel free to call our help desk. They're very familiar with all these reports. And then for other assistance, do you want to point out the Help Center? Like OFCY.com or .org, sorry, we have a list of OFCY and Cityspan specific guides here. So there's information that you can just click these links and download, and you can have it there to read. You can call our help desk, like I said. You can email your grant manager. You can email support@cityspan.com. And then we also have an issue tracker, which is a place to post questions. And this is monitored by the Cityspan staff. So these responses you see are coming from our help desk. So this is in lieu of giving us a call or sending an email. You can post questions here, and we respond to these usually the same day. If it's a bigger issue that we need time to resolve, we'll let you know that we're working on it, and we'll post back. But when you post questions here, you receive an email of our responses, as well as our responses are posted here. So there's quite a few ways to reach out to us if you have questions. Please do, because we are here to support you. And obviously your grant managers are as well. And so that's everything that I wanted to go over today. Thank you, everybody. I know it was long. But we did record this, and so once it's ready, it will be posted on the OFCY website. And I think that's all I have. Scott, is there anything you want to wrap up with?
Yeah, just thanks for your time. I know this is a lot of information, especially if you've never used Cityspan or very peripherally. So I feel like we live in such a data intensive society that it's only as useful as when you're using it. So when you actually get down to using the system, I'm sure more questions will pop up. Once again, feel free to reach out to the help desk as you navigate how to translate your program design into the Cityspan modules. Thanks again. Once again, this will be up on our website. I also host in-person trainings at Franco Gallo Plaza and Computer Lab A. You can find information on that in our ofcy.org/Cityspan. So thank you all for your time. Once again, thank you, Haley.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Bye, everybody.
Bye.